In 1992, English football changed forever. The old First Division was scrapped, and in its place, the Premier League was born, a competition that would revolutionize the sport. To mark the occasion, a group of players from the 22 founding clubs gathered for an iconic promotional photo, a snapshot in time before the league exploded into the global powerhouse we know today. But this wasn't just a lineup of every club's biggest star. Some of the names were obvious choices: captains, internationals, key players. But others? Well, they might not have been the first name you'd expect to represent their club. Some went on to lift trophies, some faded into obscurity, and a few took completely unexpected paths after football. From Premier League winners to reality TV stars, coaches to club ambassadors, this is what happened to the 22 players in the first ever Premier League promo photo. You're watching Retro Football Club. Let's get into it. So, starting on the back row and working from left to right, our first player is Sheffield Wednesday's David Hirst. A powerful old-school centre-forward, Hirst had everything: pace, strength, and a thunderous left foot. He was one of the most underrated English strikers of the 90s, but persistent injuries and fierce competition meant he never got as many international caps as he deserved. He played a crucial role in Wednesday's 1991 League Cup win and was a key part of their double domestic cup final appearance in 1993. Alex Ferguson famously tried to sign him in 1992 for Manchester United, but Wednesday refused to sell, with Ferguson instead completing a move for Eric Cantona. Hirst stayed at Hillsborough until 1997, before finishing his career at Southampton in an injury-hit 3 years. After retiring, he became an academy coach for both Sheffield Wednesday and Crystal Palace. These days, Hirst is back at Hillsborough pulling a different shift for the Owls, as a club legend host for their corporate hospitality suite. Our second player is Manchester United winger Lee Sharp. One of the most exciting young wingers in English football in the early 90s, Sharp had blistering pace, flair, and a knack for scoring important goals. However, he somewhat surprisingly peaked in his early 20s. He won 3 Premier League titles with United, but as Ryan Giggs emerged, his playing time became more limited. By the time the 95-96 campaign had ended, Sharp's role at the club diminished somewhat. In the summer, he moved to rivals Leeds United, hoping to revive his career, but injuries and inconsistency plagued him. He later played briefly in Italy with Sampdoria before bowing out of the Premier League in 2001, following several seasons with Bradford City. He later took on brief spells with Portsmouth and Exeter City, and even had a stint in Iceland with Grindavik. He retired in 2004 with non-league part-timers Garforth Town, before taking an unexpected career turn, appearing on reality TV shows, including Celebrity Love Island and Dancing on Ice. He briefly returned to the field in 2019 as part of the Legends team on ITV's Harry's Heroes, but has since settled in Spain where he runs a luxury golf retreat. Next up, Aston Villa's Tony Daly, known for his blistering pace and ability to beat defenders. He was a key part of Villa's team from 1985 onwards. His performances earned him 7 England caps, and he was expected to be a major player for both club and country moving forward. However, injuries became a constant problem, but this didn't stop him playing over 230 times for Villa. By 1994, he departed top-flight English football for good. Dropping down to the First Division with Wolves, he was never able to stay fit for long enough to recapture his Villa form. He later played for Watford, Walsall, and Forest Green Rovers before retiring. After his playing days ended, Daly became a fitness coach, working at Wolves and Sheffield United. His expertise in sports science has made him a respected figure in the industry, and he now plies his trade as a personal trainer. Chelsea's Vinnie Jones was the next player in our featured lineup, and to be fair, the photo had barely developed before he had moved back to former club Wimbledon. His reputation as one of the hardest men in football was well earned. He had made his name as part of Wimbledon's crazy gang, famously winning the FA Cup in 1988. By the time he arrived at Chelsea in 1991, he was seen as a more experienced leader, though his combative style remained unchanged. His second spell at the Dons lasted a further 7 seasons. He retired in 1999 with Queen's Park Rangers and transitioned into a Hollywood acting career. He quickly became a cult figure, starring in films like Lock, Stock and Snatch, playing tough guy roles that mirrored his on-field persona. He has appeared alongside some of the world's most famous actors, but outside of the silver screen, Jones has spoken openly about his struggles with personal loss, particularly the death of his wife in 2019, showing a much more emotional and reflective side to his personality. Although still active as an actor, he is currently the figure of his own reality farming show, Vinnie Jones in the Country. Now we move on to Mark Wright from Liverpool. A commanding centre-back, Wright had been a key player for England at the 1990 World Cup, scoring a famous winner against Egypt and helping the team reach the semi-finals. He joined Liverpool in 1991 and was later made club captain, helping guide the team through the early years of the Premier League. He remained at Anfield until 1998, but injuries started to take their toll, forcing him into early retirement. After football, Wright moved into coaching and management, taking charge of Southport, Oxford United, Peterborough United, Chester City and Floriana, though he never quite replicated his on-field success in the dugout. In 2019 he joined Lee Sharp and other ex-pros on the TV show, Harry's Heroes. Now we move on to John Walk from Ipswich Town, a true Ipswich legend, notable to non-football fans as one of the football stars opposite Michael Caine and Sylvester Stallone in the movie Escape to Victory. Walk was nearing the end of his long and successful career when the Premier League launched. A versatile midfielder and defender, he had been a key part of Ipswich's UEFA Cup winning side in 1981 and enjoyed a successful spell at Liverpool, where he won the First Division title in 1983-84. But Ipswich was always home, and he returned for a third spell at the club in 1991, playing into his late 30s. His incredible ability to score from midfield saw him net over 170 career goals, a remarkable feat for a non-striker. After retiring, Walk stayed close to the club, becoming an Ipswich Town ambassador, and remains a beloved figure at Portman Road. Now we move on to Tim Flowers from Southampton. One of the most consistent and underrated goalkeepers of the early Premier League era, Flowers was Southampton's first-choice keeper in 1992. His excellent shot-stopping ability earned him a move to Blackburn Rovers in 1993, where he became a crucial part of the 1994-95 Premier League winning side under Kenny Dalglish. Flowers was also capped 11 times for England, including as part of the Euro '96 squad. After leaving Blackburn, he played for Leicester City, winning another League Cup in 2000s, before short stints with Stockport County, Coventry City, and Manchester City. Post-football, he became a goalkeeping coach with Nottingham Forest and back with former side, Manchester City. In 2010 he moved into management and has had various spells in charge of Stafford Rangers, Northampton Town, Solihull Moors, Macclesfield Town, Barnet, Stratford Town, Gloucester City, Bromsgrove Sporting, Redditch United and, currently, Alve Church. Tim Sherwood was Blackburn's captain as they built towards their historic 1994-95 Premier League title win. He was a box-to-box player with a strong work ethic and leadership qualities, which made him a crucial figure in Kenny Dalglish's side. After 7 successful seasons at Ewood Park, he moved to Tottenham in 1999, where he won the League Cup in his first season. Later in his career, he had short spells at Portsmouth and Coventry City, before hanging up his boots in the early 2000s. After retiring, Sherwood went into coaching and had a brief but memorable spell as Tottenham's manager, where he introduced players like Harry Kane to the first team. He then took charge of Aston Villa, leading them to the 2015 FA Cup final, though his time at the club was short-lived. Since then, he has worked as a TV pundit for Sky Sports, known for his outspoken opinions on modern football. Now we move on to Ian Brightwell from Manchester City. A long-serving player at Main Road, Brightwell was a versatile defender and midfielder who spent more than a decade at the club, playing alongside younger brother David for some of that time. He played over 300 games for City, including some memorable Manchester derbies. In 1998, he left for Coventry City, followed by short spells at Walsall, Stoke City, Port Vale and Macclesfield Town. Whilst with Vale and Town, he had spells as caretaker manager of both clubs, and he ended up managing the latter permanently between 2007 and 2008. Since then, Brightwell has worked away from the sport and has worked as an occasional co-commentator on BBC Radio Manchester. Now we move on to Ian Butterworth from Norwich City. As Norwich's captain, Butterworth was a crucial figure in their early Premier League success, particularly in the 1992-93 season, when Norwich shocked everyone by finishing third. A no-nonsense centre-half, he was a leader at the back, keeping Norwich competitive against bigger clubs. Later in his career, he had a spell in the MLS with Colorado Rapids and in Sweden with IK Brage as player-manager. He went on to manage Irish side Cobh Ramblers, before working on the coaching staff at Darlington, Cardiff City, Bristol Rovers and Hartlepool United. In 2009, he returned to Norwich City as assistant manager to Brian Gunn, although it was a short-lived tenure. He now works in sports recruitment. Now we move on to Hans Sagers from Wimbledon. He was the first-choice goalkeeper and played a key part of their infamous Crazy Gang in the early Premier League years. Originally from the Netherlands, he had played in England for several years before settling at the Dons. He was a solid, experienced keeper, though his career became overshadowed by controversy. In 1997, he was one of the players accused of match-fixing, a scandal that rocked English football. Although no criminal charges were brought, the case tainted his reputation. He later took in spells with Wolves and non-league side Woking, before a shock return to the Premier League with Tottenham Hotspur. After retiring, he moved into goalkeeping coaching, remaining with Spurs before moving on to Fulham, PSV Eindhoven, Australia, RKC, and currently FC Eindhoven. The most obscure player you'll hear in this video is likely Lee Hurst. He was a promising midfielder who had broken into Coventry City's first team in the early 90s. He was known for his energy and passing ability, but just as he was establishing himself, disaster struck. A serious knee injury effectively ended his career. By 1996, he had been forced to retire at just 26 years old, having made less than 50 league appearances. In 1998, he came out of retirement in the United States with Charleston Battery, but after a handful of appearances, he once again called time on his career. Hurst has since ran his own football academy in the West Midlands and has kept up ties with former club Coventry. Next we come to Carl Bradshaw from Sheffield United. A tough-tackling fullback, Bradshaw was a reliable and no-nonsense defender for the Blades in the early years of the Premier League. His physicality made him a key player in Dave Bassett's direct, hard-working Sheffield United side. After leaving the club, he had spells at Norwich City, Wigan Athletic, and Scunthorpe United, before dropping into non-league football with Alfreton Town. Post-retirement, he has predominantly worked away from the sport, notably as a bricklayer. Now we move on to Gordon Durie from Tottenham Hotspur. The veteran Scottish international was a versatile forward with a strong eye for goal. Durie had already made a name for himself at Chelsea before moving to Spurs in 1991. While he was a reliable performer, he only managed 11 league goals in 58 appearances. In 1993, he moved to boyhood club Rangers, where he enjoyed huge success, winning multiple Scottish League titles and domestic cups. He also missed a penalty for Scotland against England in Euro '96, but was regarded as one of the biggest names in Scottish football, helping Rangers during the club's 9-in-a-row dominance. After retiring, he moved into coaching. Initially managing East Fife, he returned to Rangers as part of Ali McCoist's coaching staff, before later focusing on scouting and youth development. In 2016, he was declared bankrupt after a failed investment in a film production company. We move back to David Hillier, who ironically we recently profiled as part of our video on obscure players from Merlin's Premier League '94 sticker book. So despite treading on trodden ground, we will persevere. Hillier came through the ranks at Arsenal and was seen as a reliable defensive midfielder in George Graham's side. He was part of the First Division winning squad, though he wasn't always a guaranteed starter. He was part of Arsenal's cup successes in the early 90s, helping them win the '93 FA Cup and League Cup double. However, injuries started to limit his playing time. His time at Highbury was tinged in a little controversy, as he was charged for stealing luggage from Gatwick Airport and failing a drug test owed to cannabis used. In 1996, Hillier left Arsenal and moved to Portsmouth, where he played for 3 years. He then had spells at Bristol Rovers and Barnet, before retiring from professional football in the early 2000s. Hillier did manage several non-league clubs, but largely took an entirely different career path. He became a firefighter in Bristol, a job he's held for many years. However, he has occasionally done punditry work for Arsenal TV. Before we move on to the bottom row, please consider giving us a like and a subscribe for more retro football content. We've got goals, stories, nostalgia, and much more. Please check out our other videos and get involved with the channel. Now, let's move on. Gary Charles from Nottingham Forest. A highly rated right-back, Charles was part of Brian Clough's final Forest team and was expected to have a long and successful career after making his England debut at a young age. He went on to play for Derby County, Aston Villa, Benfica, West Ham United, and Birmingham City, but he never quite hit his early potential and was only capped twice internationally. He had spells as assistant manager at Lincoln City, and then managed Nuneaton Town, but most of the revelations came about in his personal life. He opened up about struggling with alcoholism, several spells in prison and in rehab. Charles has since turned his life around, and now runs a business that helps people who are suffering from depression and alcoholism. Now we move on to Andy Ritchie from Oldham Athletic. A cult hero at Oldham, Ritchie was one of their most important players, with the former Manchester United striker playing a pivotal role during their rise to the Premier League. He was a smart, technical forward who had an eye for goal. After leaving Oldham, he played for Scarborough before returning to Oldham in 1997, stepping up to first-team manager a year later. In 2005, he became manager of Barnsley, and later to Huddersfield Town several years later. Ritchie now works for former club Manchester United as a legend player host for their hospitality suites at Old Trafford. Next up is Crystal Palace's John Salako. He was a fast and skillful winger who had already been capped by England when he appeared in the 1992 Premier League launch photo. He was a key part of Palace's team in the early 90s, particularly during their third-place finish in 1991. However, injuries slowed him down. Following Palace's relegation in 1995, he remained in the league with Coventry City and later moved on to play for Bolton Wanderers, Fulham, Charlton Athletic, Reading and Brentford before retiring in 2005. Post-football, Salako became a TV pundit, regularly appearing on Sky Sports. He also had a brief spell as Crystal Palace's first-team coach, working under Alan Pardew. Now we move on to Andy Sinton from Queen's Park Rangers. Sinton was a highly skilled winger who had already established himself as one of the best wide players in the league by 1992. He was QPR's star man, known for his dribbling, crossing ability and powerful shot. His performances earned him a place in England's Euro '92 squad, and it was no surprise when he left QPR in 1993 for Sheffield Wednesday in a £2.75 million transfer, a club record fee at the time. He later played for Tottenham, where he won the League Cup in 1999, before finishing his professional career with Wolves before spells in non-league football with Burton Albion, Bromsgrove Athletic and Fleet Town. After retiring, he went into management, taking charge of both Fleet Town and AFC Telford United, before returning to work as a club ambassador at QPR. Now we move on to Irish international Alan Kernahan from Middlesbrough. A solid and reliable centre-back, Kernahan was a key part of Middlesbrough's defence in the early 90s. His performances earned him a move to Manchester City in 1993, but he struggled to establish himself in a team going through turmoil. After leaving City, he played in Scotland for St Johnstone, Brechin City, Clyde, Livingston and Falkirk, before moving into coaching and management. Kernahan managed Clyde, and later Dundee, before a spell as caretaker manager of Brentford in 2013. He later managed Northern Irish side Glentoran, but now works as a scout for Arsenal. Now we move on to Gordon Strachan from Leeds United. Strachan was the heart and soul of Leeds United's 1991-92 title-winning team, captaining them to First Division glory in the final season before the Premier League began. Even at 35, his work rate and footballing intelligence made him a crucial player in midfield. He remained at Leeds for a few more years before moving to Coventry City, where he eventually became player-manager. His coaching career then took him to Southampton, where he led them to the 2003 FA Cup final, followed by a successful spell at Celtic, winning 3 league titles. He later managed Middlesbrough and the Scotland national team before moving into punditry, where his sharp wit and no-nonsense analysis have made him a popular figure on TV. He is also the technical director of Dundee. The final player on the photo is Peter Beardsley from Everton. By the time Beardsley appeared in this photo, he was already one of the most technically gifted English players of his generation. A 2-time league winner with Liverpool, his move to Everton in 1991 raised eyebrows, but even at 31, he was still a class act. His creativity, movement, and ability to link up play made him a key player at Goodison Park, though his time there lasted only 2 seasons. In 1993, he returned to boyhood club Newcastle United, where he became a crucial part of Kevin Keegan's entertainers, helping them finish runners-up in 1995-96. His playing career continued into the late 90s, with spells at Bolton Wanderers, Manchester City, Fulham and Hartlepool United, before he finally retired. After football, Beardsley moved into coaching at Newcastle, where he worked with their youth teams over a number of years, even managing the first team in a caretaker capacity. However, his coaching career ended in controversy after allegations of bullying and racist abuse, which led to his departure from the club in 2019. Although he was eventually cleared of the accusations of racism, he hasn't worked in football since. Thanks for watching. Feel free to browse our other videos for more like-minded retro football content.